Welcome to the Industry Insider, brought to you by PromoCorner. Each week, promotional product professionals Meg Erber, Jeff Franklin, and Stephen McFadden, along with special guests, will discuss industry news, trends, and events with a focus on educating the promotional products industry. The Industry Insider, the nerdy news you need to know.
Welcome back to yet another exciting episode of the Industry Insider, your promotional products podcast, where you can get all the nerdy news you need to know about. My name is Jeff Franklin, National Accounts Manager with Headwear USA, and I am joined today by three other lovely folks. But of course, before we get to them, we got to tell you about our fine sponsor for today. Greater Pacific is your full-service creative agency. Their experience comes from experience with thousands of custom projects completed for clients for over 2 decades, with expertise in promotional products in the Advertising Specialties Institute, custom OEM, product design, project management, CPSIA compliance, product testing, and full service logistics. They've done it all and become more effective with every opportunity. Greater Pacific creates the ultimate manufacturing experience for their clients. So go visit greaterpacific.com today. Tell them the Industry Insider sent you. Why don't we say hey to Meg Erber, since the audio is sounding crisp right now?
Oh, no.
As the earbud falls out.
So I have some big news, some exciting news that I'm finally allowed to share. And you guys don't even know this. My daughter joined the Navy.
Nice.
Yeah, she leaves at the end of May. So she just joined. She goes to MEPS and swears in at the end of May and leaves. So I'm very proud of her. And I'm just really excited for her. So yeah, so congratulations, Courtney. And yeah, that's it. I'm just really excited about it and very proud of her.
That's cool. Following in mama's footsteps.
Yeah.
Yeah. Steve McFadden, how are you doing today on this lovely Thursday, since this is a pre-recorded episode?
I'm so glad you told me the day. I feel like every time we talk, I'm like, you're doing what on a Tuesday? You're like, Steven, it's Thursday. You're 2 days off. So
this has felt a little bit like a different kind of week. I mean, it is kind of, we're coming into spring break. Weird. It's Easter. Every day has not felt like the day it's supposed to be.
No, it hasn't. And, the kids are, like you said, the kids are off. And so we've had some little spots where we've played hooky to go do some fun things with them. And so I'm like, every day's a weekend. And since yesterday I worked full, that means today must be the second day of the week, which would be Tuesday.
Do your kids refer to it that way too? Because my kids got it like last night when they got out of school, they were like, tomorrow's the weekend. I'm like, for you it is.
It felt like a weekend though, even though I was still working, it felt like a weekend.
You really want to confuse your kids, show them a calendar and show them that really weekends are 1 week beginning and 1 week end, and see where that goes. That's a fun conversation to have.
Well, I mean, we could always have a fun question with our special guest for today, Michael Barblett. Michael, how are you doing? First of all, CEO with Headwear USA.
Yeah, look, I'm good. We had a container come in this morning, so got a workout in. Unpacking that. So otherwise I'm enjoying myself. Happy to be here. Thank you.
You don't sound like you're from here, Michael.
No, I'm
from London.
I've chased the promotional products from Australia all the way over here. You guys. You kept telling me, Jeff, because I've been working with Headwear for quite some time through our Australian office, our head office there. You kept saying that this is where all the action happens, so I thought I'd better come check it out for myself.
Yeah, and have you found this is where all the action is?
Look, I think there's definitely a bit of action going on here. There's a lot of fun to be had. There's a lot of big sales, a lot of all the fun things that we do within our industry are definitely coming out of here first. So it's good. It's good to see, and it's good to be a part of it.
Sweet. So since Stephen has had that question about the calendar and, Saturday ending the week and Sunday beginning the week, does Australia do your calendars the same way, or do you guys do that funky calendar where it starts with Monday?
Look, I think it's all down to the person, isn't it? If you really want it, your week could start on Sunday because you've had a few too many, or it could, end on Friday because you've had a big week at work and you don't really want to do anything. It depends on the individual, right?
I think the more important question is what goes first, the month or the date?
Oh, definitely the date. There's the days make up a month, which make up a year. You guys do it wrong. There's no questions about that one.
Stephen, basically anything that America does, it's backwards to the rest of the world. So,
yeah, I will say that that is I raised myself a good point. So I actually missed an event date because of this. We had someone that had something that they had put in their email that they needed by like 4 or 5 or whatever the year was. And so what was it? No, it was the other way around. 5-4, and then we, so I was like, okay, cool. We got like a whole extra month. They're like, we needed it in April. I was like, not according to your email. So that was something that I had to relearn early in the industry. So
that's interesting.
I feel like globally we should just adopt like the day and then the 3-letter abbreviation for the month.
I'm okay with that.
Just a very American thought to go, oh, let's get what everyone else does, make it slightly different because we don't do it this way.
Yeah.
So,
well, you said all the fun things are happening here. So I think we, the fun people, should decide what.
All right, let's do it. All in favor? All in favor for switching it to 3, what day is it? 6 April 2023?
6 APR. All right. So, Michael, it is customary for us to give our special guest a good 3 to 4 minutes to introduce yourself, maybe tell you how you got started in the promotional products industry and what you've been up to since. So why don't we let you take it away and introduce yourself and tell us your story a little bit?
Yeah. So look, I actually grew up around Headwear. So my old man, Peter, actually is one of the directors worldwide, or he is the worldwide director. And so he sort of started the whole thing from the ground up. And when I was younger, I sort of never really wanted to be a part of it, if I'm being honest. I always told myself, I'm going to go off and do my own thing. But while I was at university, I used to work bars and whatnot. And I actually started off working a little bit for him just to help him out with a staffing issue. And as COVID hit, obviously all the bars shut down. I lost all the main work that I was getting, and sort of he helped me out, giving me a few more hours. And from there, I sort of fell in love with it. The whole idea of, making it, talking to someone, creating an order, and then physically getting it in your hands. There's no feeling like it, and it's very hard to explain to people who aren't in the industry like us. But it definitely is something that, when you walk around with it, for us, it's a hat, you and I, Jeff, on your head, and you're like, I made this. This was my idea from go to woe. Someone said, I need this color and I need this logo, and I've made this thing. It's quite a good feeling. So sort of chased that a little bit, and then as I finished up at university, there was an opening here, and I sort of stuck my hand up. I've come out here. I'm working with sort of Nick, who's the president and one of the principals of the business over here. And we're just, we're trying to kick goals. We're just trying to, get more out the door, help more people, and sort of sell more caps at the end of the day. That's the modus operandi and sort of what we're aiming for.
And we're doing it.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you. Is it a prerequisite to have a luscious beard to work at Headwear USA?
Pretty much.
No, I'd like to think that Jeff's copying me, but looking at the difference in size, it sort of seems the other way around. But I will say that I've been growing this one longer than him, so definitely he's copying me.
I don't know
love where
that's
this is
true.
going.
I will say I did. So I've grown the beard out before, as you guys all know. But I did start growing it out again when I saw that mustache. And then I was disappointed when I came into the office the other day and I saw you chopped it all off, Michael. I mean, Michael had a handlebar mustache out to here, you guys. Like it was,
Look, it was funny until the wax came out of it 15 minutes after you put it in, and then it's just going everywhere. And there's something about, eating a burger that you don't really want to be chewing on your own mustache. So
save it for later.
That and every time I saw my mother, she was just like, shave it. So it was a little bit forced, a little bit of an easy option, and yeah, off it went.
Fair enough. Well, listen, we are here to talk today about forecasting and basically stock take, and how a supplier in our industry would basically go about forecasting for bringing stock in, whether it's a new item or just, some of the more popular styles. How do you go about it when there's things like the pandemic that come through, like anything that you can throw into it and provide as some nerdy news for us, Michael? We'd love to hear it. But why don't we, like Meg or Steven, do you guys have any directed questions first before we get into it?
I do. Go ahead, Meg.
No, I mean, I was just going to talk about how what we've seen is year over year since COVID, supply chain issues, logistics issues, labor shortages. But when it comes down to it, if there's something there to sell, we'll sell it. Then I think everyone overbought, and in early 2023, there was an excess of inventory everywhere. But I didn't really see necessarily the promotions for sales and discounts going. So I'm just kind of overall, but I'm just kind of.
Yeah, well, I guess the first place to start might be, the reason why this is such a hot topic is kind of looking at the timeline of the last 3 years with inventory. We went from a record pace and set in 19. So I know orders and inventory that needed to be there for 20 were probably purchased in 19 to get ready for 20, expecting a lot of growth. And then 20, everything shuts down. So there's all this inventory, right? I think that was where a lot of companies found themselves. And then everybody slowed their roll in 21, knowing they still probably had some stuff from 20 still coming in. And then business came back in, late 21, early 22 in a lot of markets. So it was like it seemed like the industry was trying to catch up, but because of the delays in the timeline of inventory purchasing, it seems like a very complicated thing to do when you don't know the future. So maybe you can speak on how do you go to market? How do you try to do that? Is there order this at a minimum here, reorder this here? So maybe walk us through that process.
So, to put it simply, it's educated guessing, right? And anyone who tells you anything else is sort of trying to sell you, magical beans almost. So you're looking first things first, you have to look at every single item as an individual item. Quite often people will talk about, this is a major seller for us. And I'm going to throw some numbers out there, and Jeff might be the only one who understands me. But something like a 4199 black worldwide for us, that sells hand over fist. It's our most popular item. Now, the thing is, a lot of people will then talk about 4199 is the most popular item, which brushed heavy cotton cap. It's very, very, it's a sturdy cap. It's a staple, right? But something like the really bright orange isn't going to sell anywhere near as much as a 4199 black, right? And then there's going to be items that aren't as popular. They're going to sell more than a 4199 orange. So you have to look at every single item as an individual unit, right? You can't extrapolate because of this, then this. So the first and foremost thing is you have to look at every single SKU that you've got and break it down and look at that number. For us, we run a year-on-year system. So we look at our sales currently for this year, so the year-to-date sales, and then we look at last year's sales. And from there, we sort of have a look at what's going on. Have we sold, I just did our stock order or just approved it a couple of days ago for this month. And we're looking at the first 3 months worth of sales, right? So you look at, if I times it by 4, how's that in reference to this year, to last year's sales, sorry. But then you don't want to be holding 100% of sort of a year's worth of sales. But then if you've only sold 100 pieces and last year you sold 1,000 pieces, you don't have to be basing your number off 1,000, right? But you also don't want to be basing your number off a sale of 400 because something's different there. And then you have to look at it. So there's a lot of, looking at individual numbers, looking at individual SKUs, and then there is a little bit of gut feeling. For me, I look at something and I go our 4181, and I go, well, that's a Richardson 118. So I know that that's going to keep selling as they have problems with stock, right? So that I want to go a little bit heavier. I'm leaning towards that growing as an item year on year. But then, you take something like we've got a lot of caps in our warehouse with flames on them because 10 years ago, they sold absolutely berserk. And then one morning, everyone woke up and went, this is just a silly thing to put on my head. And so
NASCAR.
We've got the stock there. So you can get burned when you're looking at year on year. And that's part of what's happening. But you have to be smart enough.
No. Hold on. I'm going to put this out there right now. Nadav, if you're listening, we've got a ton of flame caps that are they've got a little asterisk beside them, right, Michael, or no?
Not anymore. We removed that.
Oh, all right.
But same thing.
I was going to say, I know somebody that'll buy them.
Give them my number. We could talk afterwards.
Commission.
I'll give you my personal cell. They can call me anytime. They can have it.
I don't. Is NASCAR still doing that kind of stuff? Are they still like crazy?
Who else would be doing it?
Nobody. Fire departments.
There you go. All right. So, Michael, I think it's really interesting, too, because you did come from, headquarters in Australia. So, I mean, you've got the experience from how we handle things on an international level as well, I would think. So, obviously, Australia, they sell a lot more stock than what we do here in the States, right? So they're probably bringing in containers like every week or every other week.
Yeah, in the middle of summer, you're probably looking at one a week at a bare minimum, if not a 40-footer every week rather than a 20-footer when it comes to stock. I think like one of the big things that I probably didn't touch on as well is because of that international sphere that we're in, we've got branches all across the globe. We have the ability to look at what's happening elsewhere. So take, for instance, bucket hats. They've been selling reasonably well in Australia for a very long time because they're a safety item. They cover the whole of your head rather than just the front. But then they became a bit more popular and fashionable. And from that, we're doing a container of black, large, extra large bucket hats every month for Western Australia, which only has a population of like 2 million people, right? So we're just pumping these things out. And because of that, we've been able to see before the trend and before it's too late in the trend that we want to be, going ahead with that. So, we've got the way that we do our stock orders. Peter, who is the director, he's looking at every single one and sort of seeing if he's seeing anything that we've missed. So it's double checked, obviously. And he's been able to go, okay, I can see you're starting to sell the bucket hats, and given what I know elsewhere. So it happened first in Australia, then it happened in the UK, then into Europe. And now we're seeing it here, which is how we've been able to, add huge numbers of bucket hats here. And, we've been sitting on them for 2-3 months because it's been winter. But just now they're starting to sell as we go into summer. And I expect that to go up and up and up because they're almost a fashion item now, which I personally still don't understand.
I know.
You've got that movement between the international group where they can all sort of advise and you're getting to see this greater picture rather than what you're selling. Because if you don't have something, you can't sell it. So you can't then know that you should be getting it in.
So when we go to market, we used to have a lot of West Coast and East Coast clients. And so as far as things that are trending, typically we can look out West or even up in like New York area for, fashion trends, right? We'll see those kind of move their way across the country and down. I'm assuming you can do something very similar, seeing that you have such an international presence to kind of predict. I'm sure there's misses though, right? Some things just don't correlate in different countries and different places and different climates. Have you found kind of the way to forecast using, like you said, future sales and trends to kind of pre-purchase? Do you kind of try to get ahead of it in that way, or do you kind of wait for the demand to then, bring in inventory?
Look, I think answer that question is yes and no. So we definitely, just because you see it in one place doesn't mean it's going to happen elsewhere, right? Like take, for instance, America. You guys buy a huge amount of camo. You love it and completely understandable. But then you go to other places, we're not going to sell anywhere near as much. So if we see an uptake in camo here, we're probably not going to go to Europe and start buying up more over there for their levels of stock. But then you do have certain styles and you start to look at, and the biggest one that I think a lot of people miss is you got to talk to your clients. So when an item starts selling a lot, just jump on the phone and go, hey, what are you buying these for? What's sort of the purpose? And if they just say, oh, I've got this really weird group in the corner that wanted these ones this one time, then you keep that in the back of your mind that it's probably not, that massive hit isn't going to be a big trend. But if they say, oh, this is the third, college group that I've talked to that absolutely adores this flat peak style, then you're going to start to think, okay, this might be becoming a bit more of a fashion forward, really retail sort of style that I might want to have here for the promotional game. And then from there, you talk to the other members in the group. They might be saying the same thing. We can all sort of bounce off each other and then go, okay, maybe new colors, maybe increase the holding of it, things like that.
What about program business, Michael? Like if somebody wants to, bring in a particular item or use a particular item for a program, but maybe it's more of a fringe style. It's not something that we stock a lot of. Is that something that, a supplier would maybe take into consideration as far as like what they expect to sell or forecast to sell over the course of the next 6 months to a year?
Look, the problem, like, as you know, like Jeff, because we've had this conversation quite a few times, I would more prefer program business to be done through something like our fast track service offshore, that fully custom, we can get it to you in 4 to 5 weeks, and there's small minimums of 144. So, but I understand there's certain people who want to do programs of 10 or 15 pieces. The problem with, using a program to forecast for styles, it takes 4 months to get something to us from production to our warehouse. And with that in mind, if we buy it now, they might have finished that program, or that program might be dead by the time we get the stock in. So it's sort of a case by case situation. You've got to know, the rep that's saying, hey, I have this program. You got to know the opportunity. But at the same time, there's always other options. If it's a really fringe style, you're sort of looking at what it is and what is an alternative almost, or is there an option of going offshore and doing it fully custom instead of just bringing in 144 pieces and hoping that they'll buy them all, given that no one else is planning to.
I have 2 questions for you. So first one, when you're forecasting, I'm assuming, I think I heard this somewhere in those, that you're looking at trends and what's coming from like west to the east, well, from Australia on over. Are you seeing any of these trends ever that are kind of pushed through or through retail or through politics, or is there something that's really pushing the trends that you guys are seeing and using to forecast inventory here for the U.S. promotional product industry?
I'm sure there is something, but I'm not seeing it personally. Right?
Okay.
We specialize in the promotional products, right? So to try and do retail grade, caps, while our caps are really good quality, they're never going to be a Tommy Hilfiger, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're never going to be something like that. And when you look at retail, a lot of it is branded, right? So it's less about the style and what the hat is and more about what the hat has on it.
The brand.
So I'm sure there is a way of doing it, but it's not something that we do.
Right.
Well,
and I know
Michael, I think the bucket hats in particular that you mentioned, I mean, obviously that's a retail forward, or as you said, has become more of a fashion item. So, I mean, I think there is some of that happens for sure. Like, but we would follow the trend of retail. We're not trying to set that trend.
Right. That's what I meant. Follow it. Yeah. And what was I going to say?
You had a 2-parter. Mm-hmm.
I know there was a second part to that, but it'll come back to me. The other one's a completely different question. So let's talk about when you're finally like, okay, this promotional product, this hat has seen its day. It's time to discontinue it. What factors go into you saying, all right, it's time? Is it a lack of sales over 3 months? Is it slowly declining sales, or maybe you couldn't source the ingredients, the pieces that go into the hat? What is it? What are some of the deciding factors that go into discontinue an item?
So pretty much everything you mentioned probably does go into it.
Okay.
We'd look at declining sales over years, not months. Because you look at something like a beanie, it's probably not going to sell that much during summer. So if you look at months, you're going to then start discontinuing and starting up new items left, right, and center. But we look at sort of, has it been a couple of years since we've actually had to buy it? We look at, if we were to discontinue it, do we have an alternative? Right, so something that is incredibly specific. Take, for instance, a fitted cap for us. We're more hesitant to discontinue, but something that's just a brushed cotton, with a different closure on the back, or it might have a different type of trimming. Well, we've got quite a few options that are very similar. Is it a particular colorway that isn't offered anywhere else? So you're looking at whether or not there's an alternative, whether or not you're actually selling it. Because if you're not selling it, then you don't really have to discontinue it until you're out of stock. Because if you're only selling 20 pieces every year and you've got 400 pieces, well, then you've got, quite a few years left there of stock.
Yeah.
But if the other one that you mentioned was what happens if, the materials stop being available.
Yeah.
Then you don't really have an option, right? It's like, for us, we deal with one factory. So either they can get us the material, and if they can't, we'll send them to market to see if they can. But there are, I think since I've been involved over the last 5 or 6 years, we've discontinued one style due to fabric no longer being available. But we have an alternative that is, basically the same thing.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that. Okay, I know, because like the A130 for us, I'm an SNS Activewear. The A130 has been a staple in our line for the last 12 years, and we almost go by that. What's not broke, don't fix. But when a piece of apparel has been in the industry for 12 years without any updates or changes, I mean, do you still wear that polo that you bought in 2011? I mean, so I think what we're doing is we're same fabrication, just kind of making it more modern and giving it a new item number. So I think when you are looking at trends, is that same style still fashionable? Yes, it's still filling the bucket, it's still filling the program. But I mean, at the end of the day, is the end user really happy with that unmodernized piece? So I think there's a lot of things to look at. And I remember what I was going to say when we were talking about trends you said something about that Richardson 118, but that goes for the 112. That 112 is one of the most popular hats in the industry. If you know that they're having inventory issues with that, what a great idea to have a comp to that, and that whole style has been really popular. So I think that's why I was just adding on to what you were saying on that. But go ahead, Stephen.
Yeah. I'm trying to think about like something that maybe people don't think about or don't know about in regards to forecasting and purchasing inventory. And I have to wonder, I feel like the biggest challenge with all this is risk management. There's like almost like a bell curve of if we have, maybe we'll enter a market where we can sell everything we have. If we have it, we can sell it. But then there's also that, how do we manage how much stuff we get in, right? How crazy do we go to try to capture more of the market share that we didn't have? And I guess with that comes the assumption of risk, right? Of being left holding inventory, or having waste or having to discontinue. And I wonder how that affects pricing too. So I don't know, is there anything you can share in regards to that? Is it based on everything you purchase is kind of lumped into pricing, or is it each style? I don't know. I don't know any of that world. So
for like, there's a couple of things that you touched on there. The first one being, how much do you buy? Well, for us, we look at the numbers of how much we sell. Even if it is a truly popular style, we're not going to go and sort of double or triple the stock holdings of what we sold last year, for instance, because it is too much of a risk. For us, we have to spend the money before we can get the goods, right? It's not like we can hold them on consignment and, tell the guy that sells them to us, like, oh, it's good, trust me, I'll pay you when someone comes and purchases it off me. We've got to outlay that cash. So that's, it is a big risk there. For us, we're able to sort of circumvent that risk of then not having the stock with, some of the other options that we have, either be it alternative or ways that you can purchase, the same item. I mentioned it before and I don't want to keep harping on about it, but that fast track offering that we have is our savior. The fact that you can get exactly the same cap at, we're talking maybe 10 cents difference, if that, when it comes to air freighting it in 3 weeks. That saves us. And it means that we don't have to go and purchase heavy amounts to be able to fill those orders should someone rock up and go, I want an extra.
And I suppose that you guys could use your own programs to get more inventory then, if you absolutely needed to domestically, right?
We could, but we don't. I don't have a single example of when we have. Okay. For us,
air freight's so expensive. You know what I mean? So you wouldn't want to air freight stock in, because then you'd lose money on the stock price.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
It's so like air freight's expensive, but offshore you get a much better price on decoration. So that's where you're getting your savings overall.
So maybe since, obviously it is a little different, it's going to be different supplier from supplier, and depending on how many SKUs you have. And I'm just trying to think, how do these suppliers that have 1,000 SKUs of, and they're all different, right? It could be writing instruments and drinkware and bags and some spatterings of apparel, and then they launch 50 new products. It's like, well, those are all new, all risk, right? It seems to be all risk. There's got to be ways of collecting that market data or seeing what's going on in different countries. If it's new, it may be new for us, but may not be new to the world, right? So, or maybe they just think it's good, right? And there's that, like you said, that gut feeling of, I think this can sell, and I think our sales team could sell this, right? So yeah, that's interesting. It's curious to think about.
I think the other thing that's also worth mentioning with what you mentioned there, as far as, they're just purchasing, let's say they bring on 10 new styles, 5 different colorways, that's 50 new SKUs.
Oh yeah.
They're not going to just do that overnight. We're looking at what our competitors do. We're looking at what the partners within the group internationally are doing. And then, pretty much everyone that stocks something also has some form of custom production. So you're looking at what people are asking you for, because at the end of the day, as I'm sure you guys all know, someone asks for something that you don't have, you go out and see if you can make it. If you get enough people asking for that, then you're probably going to start thinking about bringing it into stock. So with that, you won't do a massive order. You're not going to bring in 10,000 pieces of something, but you might go out there and purchase just a small amount, 500, 1,000 pieces to see if it is worth stocking.
Yeah, and like the couple tier 1 colors too. You don't want to go crazy and do 15 colorways on a brand new item. And that leads me to a quick point. Jeff, I'll let you talk in a second. We have this one item. It's like this. Maybe it's like this kid infant onesie. It only goes up to size 2T. I want it so bad. It's like fleece. It's like long sleeve buttons. Every single person I've showed it to, they're like, how do we get this an adult? And I'm like, we have enough people asking for it. Someone should just make it. That's all I got to say. Onesie, adult, warm. I'm in all year.
So, Michael, I think that was a really good segue, actually, talking about new styles. Because I know before in this podcast, we were sort of talking about, sort of pre-pandemic, everybody's biggest complaint about, like, especially the Vegas show in January was, people talking new styles, but then they don't have inventory until freaking May, or whatever it is. So when you're bringing in a new style, since you don't have that, that data from the past year's sales and things like that, how do you go about, deciding what you're going to bring in? I know you already mentioned that it's an educated guess most of the time, and anything outside of that, you're just trying to sell magic beans. But with a new style, like, are you seeing because of, offshore orders for a particular demand or something like that? Like, yeah,
without a doubt. Like I'm just going to throw, we've got a style that I think is on our next container that we're about to have land in a month, which is our twin stripe trucker. And we had to pick a bunch of colorways for it, right? Now, we didn't just go and decide to make a slightly deeper cap and then put 2 stripes on the side. We had a lot of people in Australia asking for it, which is where this has all started. From there, we were doing a huge amount of indent orders. So our fully custom, either fast track, we were on a boat. From there, we made a little brochure, and then people kept ringing up asking for the fully custom offering as something in stock. So from there, we've brought it over, and we've looked at what was the main colorways. What are, you're always going to have something based on black. You're always going to have something based on white. Throw in a navy. Here in the US, it's going to be stone and charcoal as well. There's all those staples, and that's where you're going to base them. But you're going to look at what people are asking for. You're not going to, at the end of the day, we want to think we know everything that's going on in our industry. But realistically, we react to what we're being asked for. So the way to do it is really to listen at what's out there and decide from there what's being asked for the most and what you think is going to move off the shelf.
Michael, I have one last question for you, and we'll start to wrap this up. Do you have any advice for our listeners about inventory, buying it quickly, waiting? What is the outlook, or if you look into your crystal ball, what kind of advice could you give to our listeners about inventory?
It's got to be do it consistently. The biggest effect of COVID that no one wants to talk about is everyone stopped purchasing because they thought COVID was going to last 2 years like the global financial crisis was. We kept purchasing for 2 reasons. One, we didn't want to be left out when the dance started again. 2, we wanted to keep our sewers in the factory still working. We didn't want to lose those guys and, never have them come back and be out of work for us again. So the main thing for me is let's be consistent, and let's make sure that you don't react. Be a little bit ahead of the curve.
That's great. Steven, do you have anything else?
No, I everything I have to offer would be just I'm just curious. So I'd be like, all right, besides black and white, what's the most popular color? Stuff like that. Meg, I'm curious from your perspective, what color besides black and white do you sell the most?
Gray.
I would have to say gray. Really? Yeah, because gray.
I was thinking navy.
I'd say, and then blues are the next. But I have a lot of sweatpants that are not in navy, and I'm like,
that's true.
It's very frustrating. But I would say the blues are a tier 1 color, and red and gray as well.
I feel like we sell everything navy or black right now. So I mean,
navy's definitely up there, but gray, like a couple years ago, sort of almost even trumped black. How much gray was selling? Yeah, it's a lot. A lot of demand for gray. So, all right, cool. Well, Meg, Steven, if you guys don't have any other follow-up questions, I mean, there's definitely a lot of different avenues that you could take with this conversation. And, Michael, we're truly blessed to have you on the podcast to give us that sort of wealth of knowledge from, the international perspective, as well as now in the United States and how Headwear goes about doing it. But there's other suppliers are going to have different ways and different ideologies. So this is all obviously just the way that one supplier does it. And Michael, you even alluded earlier, it's a little bit different for us because we do have programs like Fast Track where we're delivering in 2 to 3 weeks. So inventory is not necessarily as big of an issue for us as it might be for a supplier that's, not capable of bringing something like that. And like we had Elliot Goldman in the other week, and he was talking about, they would never airbags in because it just goes through the roof with pricing. So, it's every supplier is going to be a little bit different, but I definitely appreciate the knowledge that you shared with us. And that was awesome having you on. And if you enjoyed the podcast, it was brought to you by our good friends over at Greater Pacific. And they are a direct manufacturer of custom OEM products selling to the promotional products industry with 27 years of experience, specializing in over 10 product categories. They can source and deliver most any product for you. Greater Pacific is full service sourcing product and managing every aspect of production with staff on the ground in Asia and utilizing their time-tested 20-step project management protocol. No need to worry about quality control, product safety, CPSIA compliance, or the hundreds of details related to custom manufacturing. Greater Pacific oversees every aspect for you. Their global logistics team and in-house customs brokers ensure timely, seamless delivery. This is how they provide the ultimate manufacturing experience, and they back it by a 30-day claim for product guarantee on all orders. Head over to Greater Pacific to learn more and tell them the Industry Insider sent you. Meg, Stephen, Michael, it was awesome seeing you guys again. And until next time, guys, take care.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Promo Corner's Industry Insider. For more great content from industry thought leaders, including podcasts, blogs, and videos, visit promocorner.com.